What are we really witnessing when a global idol suddenly appears atop a black motorcycle, dressed in a leather jacket, a closed helmet, and an unreadable gaze? Is this merely a casual moment accidentally caught on camera, or a quiet clue pointing to a major change that no one has officially announced yet? This is the very question that exploded without warning in the minds of millions of BTS fans when a series of photos showing Jungkook riding a motorcycle suddenly circulated and tore through the calm of the global army's year-end in a way that felt almost irrational. There was no warning, no official teaser, no countdown. And yet, that was precisely where the shock lay. On December 27, 2025, a simple post from an X account named @Maku81562644 became the trigger for a wave of speculation that, within hours, surpassed the logic of numbers and social media statistics. 4 photos. Just 4. Yet they were enough to provoke questions far bigger than simply Jungkook riding a motorcycle. Why now? Why with an image like this? And why does it feel too deliberately constructed to be called a coincidence? The short Spanish sentence accompanying the post sounded like an ordinary compliment, almost light, even dismissible as nothing more than enthusiastic fandom expression. Yet that is precisely where the anomaly lies.
Las fotografías de almohadilla Jungkook, en su moto, le dan un toque aún más sexy, si es que puede serlo más.
The translation is simple, but the impact is not. The sentence feels like pressing a button that had long been restrained. Jungkook, a motorcycle, a sexy aura, and a masculine image no longer attempting to be softened. In a K-pop world trained to read symbols, no visual is ever truly neutral. The photos show Jungkook clad in a black leather jacket, his face covered by a helmet and mask, riding a black BMW motorcycle in what appears to be a green area with trees and buildings in the background. There is no stage, no spotlight, no agency logo. And yet, precisely because of that, the impression becomes far more powerful. This is not Jungkook on stage. This is Jungkook in the real world, or at least the version of the real world he chooses to present to the public. And it is here that the question begins to grow into a collective unease. Since when did Jungkook's real world become so cinematic? One photo in particular drew more attention than the others. Jungkook sits casually on his motorcycle, hands gripping the handlebars, body leaning slightly forward, a posture that feels unforced yet highly controlled. His gaze is hidden behind the helmet, but it is precisely the absence of facial expression that allows the imagination to run unchecked. In visual culture studies, what is concealed often speaks louder than what is shown. In that image, Jungkook does not smile at the camera. He does not greet it. He does not serve the public gaze. He simply exists. And perhaps that is where the real shock lies. Is this still the same Jungkook the world knows as BTS's cheerful, warm, and youthful magne? Or is this the portrait of an artist slowly shedding old layers and allowing the world to glimpse the next phase, without an official announcement, without a press conference, without anyone's permission? Amid BTS's hiatus as a group, every individual movement of its members carries doubled symbolic weight. And Jungkook, as one of the most influential figures in the global music industry today, can never be considered as merely passing by. Interestingly, in numerical terms, the post barely qualifies as viral by conventional standards. 5 likes, 249 views, numbers that do not even compare to a single minute of interaction on BTS's official accounts. Yet in the age of algorithms and global fandom culture, virality is not always determined by initial figures. It is determined by resonance. And the resonance of these photos was almost immediate. The hashtag Jungkook began to move.
Discussion émerged.
Theories were born. Questions collided with one another. Why could a post with such small numbers create a wave this large? The answer may lie in context rather than content alone. Jungkook had just released his latest solo single, which achieved massive success on global charts. He is in a phase of his career where every new image is instantly read as part of a larger narrative. In mass communication studies, transitional moments are both the most vulnerable and the most powerful points for a public figure. And Jungkook's motorcycle photos appeared precisely at that point. Like a puzzle piece that fell into place uninvited, yet felt undeniably right. ARMY's reaction reflected a mix of emotions difficult to describe with a single word. There was admiration bordering on excess, There was genuine shock. There was excitement, but also a faint, unspoken unease. Comments such as "this bad boy vibe is melting me," or "BMW and Jungkook," the perfect combination, sound light on the surface, but read more deeply, they signal acceptance of a new image, or at least readiness to accept it. In fandom psychology, moments like this often mark the point where the relationship between idol and fans enters a new phase. More mature, more complex, and no longer entirely safe. What makes everything even more intriguing is the absence of official confirmation from HYB. There has been no clarification about when or where the photos were taken. No statement on whether they are part of a specific project or truly personal activity. This silence, intentional or not, functions as an empty space quickly filled with speculation. In modern media culture, silence is never neutral. Silence is strategy, or at the very least, it will always be read as strategy by a public accustomed to searching for meaning in every pause. For some fans, especially in Indonesia, these photos feel like an unexpected year-end gift. Jokes about wanting to learn how to ride a motorcycle just to match Jungkook's vibe may sound simple, but they reveal the powerful influence of this visual on fans' identities and imaginations. Jungkook is not merely riding a motorcycle. He is activating a collective imagination about freedom, maturity, and a bolder version of the self. And all of it happens without a single word spoken. The emergence of these photos also reminds the public that this is not the first time Jungkook has been seen riding a motorcycle. He has shared similar moments before, always met with enthusiasm. Yet something feels different this time. Whether because of timing, visual composition, or the emotional state of the fandom during the group's hiatus, these images feel heavier, more meaningful, and harder to ignore. As if the world is being asked to pay attention, not just to look. And so the opening question resurfaces, now carrying greater weight. Is this merely about Jungkook and a motorcycle, or are we witnessing the beginning of a new, as yet untitled narrative? If 4 photos without context can shake the emotions of millions, what will happen when that context is finally revealed? Or if it is never revealed at all? This chapter may only be the beginning, but one thing is already clear. Something has moved, and an army around the world can feel it, even before they find the words to name what they are feeling. If in the initial stage of the photo's emergence the public was still wondering whether this was merely a private moment that had accidentally leaked into the public sphere, the hours that followed transformed that doubt into a more unsettling realization. The silence surrounding Jungkook only amplified the visual meaning of the images that had already circulated. There was no clarification, no denial, no explanation. And within a global entertainment ecosystem accustomed to rapid responses and instant crisis management, the silence from Jungkook and his agency felt unusual, somewhat provocative. Why wasn't it immediately clarified if this was merely a coincidence? Why wasn't it simply framed as a personal holiday activity? These questions began to surface not only among fans, but also among pop culture observers and entertainment media. In a world where every image of an idol is usually curated down to the smallest detail, the absence of an official narrative instead opened a much wider space for interpretation. And that space was quickly filled with emotion, speculation, and collective curiosity. The image of Jungkook on the black BMW motorcycle began to be dissected not merely as a photograph, but as a cultural text. The black leather jacket he wore, for instance, was immediately associated with classic symbols of masculinity, freedom, and rebellion that have long existed in Western visual history. The helmet and mask covering his face were read as metaphors of distance, a public figure choosing not to be fully accessible, even while standing directly in front of the camera. The motorcycle itself, with its premium brand and aggressive design, seemed to further reinforce a narrative of control, speed, and independence. Was all of this intentional? Or is this precisely the greatest irony of Jungkook's fame, that even his most personal moments can no longer escape layered symbolic interpretation? In media studies, this phenomenon is known as oversignification, where a single visual object triggers meanings that extend far beyond its original intent. Yet interestingly, rather than attempting to dampen this phenomenon, Jungkook appears to allow it to grow. And this act of allowing has begun to be perceived as a message in itself. Amid BTS's hiatus as a group, every solo activity by its members is automatically placed within a transitional context. Jungkook is no longer viewed solely as part of a collective entity, but as an individual figure with a narrative that is being constructed, or perhaps released from previous constraints. His latest solo single, which achieved major success on global charts, had already marked this phase, demonstrating that Jungkook is capable of standing alone without losing his mass appeal. The motorcycle photos, however, add a new dimension, a visual language that is rougher, more mature, and bolder. Global ARMY reactions reflect the complexity of this transition. On one hand, there is near uncontrollable euphoria. Many fans admit they are captivated by the bad boy aura being projected, as if Jungkook is revealing a side that had previously only been implied. On the other hand, there is also a sense of discomfort that is rarely voiced openly. Some fans have begun to ask in closed forums, "Are we ready to see Jungkook go this far? Is the image we have loved for years changing too quickly?" These questions may sound excessive to outsiders, but for a fandom as vast as ARMY, a shift in an idol's image is never trivial. It touches emotional bonds, collective memories, and a shared identity built over more than a decade. Jungkook is not merely an artist. He is a symbol of youth, hope, and a long journey shared with millions of people around the world. When that symbol begins to shift, even slightly, the impact feels deeply personal. Yet it is precisely at this point that Jungkook's strength as a cultural figure becomes most evident. Rather than losing support, the photos have expanded the spectrum of his audience. Many comments come from people who previously did not closely follow K-pop, but were drawn in by the powerful visuals and universal aura. The motorcycle, the leather jacket, and the confident posture form a visual language that transcends cultural boundaries. Without uttering a single word, Jungkook speaks to a broader, and perhaps more mature audience. This phenomenon also demonstrates how fan-made content and unofficial uploads can wield an impact equal to, or even greater than, official promotional materials. In today's digital ecosystem, authenticity, or at least the perception of authenticity, is often more valuable than overly polished production. These photos of Jungkook, which appear to be taken in a relaxed setting without a staged backdrop, feel more real to many people. And reality, ironically, often proves more disruptive than carefully planned fiction. In Indonesia, the emotional response has taken a unique form. Many fans have described the photos as an end-of-year gift, a small surprise that closes 2025 with warmth and joy. Jokes about wanting to learn how to ride a motorcycle just to match Jungkook's vibe may sound lighthearted, but they reflect a strong process of identification. Jungkook is not only entertaining, he is inspiring, influencing lifestyles, and even sparking the desire to try new things. From a sociological perspective, this is a clear sign of deep cultural influence. Yet beneath all of this, one question continues to hang in the air and grows increasingly difficult to ignore. If this is not an official teaser, why does it feel so much like one? Why did these photos appear with such precise timing, such consistent imagery, and such wide-reaching impact? Are we witnessing a subtler new strategy, where the boundary between private life and public narrative is deliberately blurred? Or is this simply a new form of freedom that Jungkook is choosing to embrace, regardless of how the world interprets it? The silence from the agency only deepens the mystery. In a highly controlled industry, silence can be the most powerful form of communication. It forces the public to keep guessing, keep talking, and keep engaging. And as long as that conversation continues, Jungkook's name remains at the center of attention, without a single official statement ever being made. This is the paradox of modern fame. Sometimes, the most effective way to shake the world is to say nothing at all. As the first wave of shock began to subside and the conversation entered a more reflective phase, one realization slowly emerged in many minds. What was happening around the photos of Jungkook riding a motorcycle was not an isolated phenomenon, but part of a larger current within the landscape of global popular culture. A current that moves slowly, almost invisibly, yet carries the power to reshape how the public understands the figure of an idol in the modern era. Since the beginning of his career, Jungkook has grown up in front of the world's cameras. From an energetic teenager to a mature artist with full command of the stage and his voice, every phase of his life has been documented and consumed by millions of eyes. Yet these photos present something different. He is not performing. He is not singing. He is not directly engaging with fans. He is simply riding a motorcycle, as if the world were not watching him. Ironically, it is precisely this lack of performative awareness that makes the world fixate on him even more. In visual culture theory, moments like this often become turning points, when a public figure stops being perceived as a character and begins to be seen as an individual with agency of their own. Jungkook on the motorcycle is not BTS's Magne playing a specific role, but a grown man comfortable with his own space and speed. This image, though simple, carries significant psychological impact for fans who have followed his journey for years. There is pride, there is a sense of loss, and there is curiosity, all blending into one. The question then shifts from "what is this?" to "where will this lead us?" If these photos were not intended as an official teaser, why do they feel like the opening of a new chapter? Why do so many fans sense a collective intuition that something is being prepared, even though no concrete evidence can be pointed to? In fandom culture, such intuition often arises from long experience reading patterns, understanding industry rhythms, and recognizing the unspoken language of the idols they love. Jungkook's immense influence ensures that even his smallest gestures create a domino effect. One photo can spark thousands of discussions, one pose can alter perception, and one moment can expand the boundary between private life and public narrative. For some, the motorcycle image symbolizes freedom and courage. For others, it represents maturity and transition. And for the entertainment world as a whole, it serves as a reminder that an artist's power does not always lie in grand promotional campaigns, but in the ability to present an image that feels honest and resonant. To this point, the greatest surprise may no longer be Jungkook riding a motorcycle, but how the world reacts to it. ARMY, with all its emotional diversity and interpretations, demonstrates that the relationship between idol and fan has evolved. It is no longer solely about unconditional adoration, but about growing together, accepting change, and facing uncertainty with curiosity as deep as affection. So when we look back at those 4 photos, the question is no longer simply whether this is a teaser or not. The more important question is what these images reveal about Jungkook's new phase, about fans' readiness to see him move further ahead, and about an entertainment world that continues to shift with the dynamics of its time. If it is true that an image can speak 1,000 words, then these photos of Jungkook on a motorcycle have begun a long conversation whose impact we are only just beginning to feel, and perhaps that is where the real shock lies. Not in the roar of the engine or the sheen of the black leather jacket, but in the collective realization that Jungkook, without announcing anything at all, has managed to shift the world's imagination. A shift that is quiet, emotional, and inevitable, leaving us all wondering, if this is only the beginning, what other surprises are waiting around the next turn?